أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير ثم أما بعد والحمد لله. Respected and beloved brothers and sisters, respected those who are attending in person as well as watching online, marhaban bikum jami'an, welcome to you all. Inshallah, today we will be having, as you know, last week we finished our recital of the Kitab Riyadh al-Salihin, and we do inshallah want to at some point, maybe after Ramadan, invite some muhaddithin, some scholars of hadith, and make it a great hafl and a great event inshallah, in which we are honoring this khatma of this Riyadh al-Salihin that we've managed to accomplish over the period of 7 years since 2018. But before we wrap up, and we haven't wrapped up, I just want to say that as we did at the beginning, we spoke a little bit about Imam al-Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi, the one who compiled the book of Riyadh al-Salihin. So I just want to today share with you once again and revise together, study together a brief biography of this great scholar, of this great faqih, of this great muhaddith, of this great giant who, despite having passed away in his 40s, the entire world is filled with his books. SubhanAllah, there isn't a household, there isn't a Islamic bookshop except that you find books of Imam al-Nawawi rahmatullah, whether it be the Arba'un, the 40 hadiths, whether it be the Riyadh al-Salihin, whether it be a book of fiqh or otherwise. So he is one of those genius scholars, one of those mastermind scholars, the great allamas, the great reference points of this ummah that we need to really know and appreciate. So who was he? He was Imam al-Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi. First of all, he was born in the holy month of Muharram. His name is Imam Abu Zakaria Sharaf al-Nawawi. He's got a longer name, but we'll keep it brief for you to remember. Imam Abu Zakaria Sharaf al-Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi. Imam al-Nawawi was born in the holy month of Muharram in the year 631 Hijri, which falls to be on the year 1233. So today we're in 2025, 1233, long time ago, in the village of Nawa village, and that's why it's called Nawawi. No one knows the village Nawa except by Nawawi. Sometimes we take pride in the city that we come from. Sometimes we say, I'm Londoni. We take pride in our London city. But in the case of Nawa, that city became honored because of a Nawawi. The scholar gave it honor. Subhanallah, it is amazing. Near the capital city of Damascus in Syria. And today, of course, we know the situation of Syria. May Allah grant them stability and peace and freedom, and may Allah grant them steadfastness and make it a hub and a stronghold of the believers of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah for the entire Ummah. Allahumma ameen. And no, we did not come from a well-known family. Okay, there isn't much mention of his father or other relatives. Sometimes the scholar comes from a family of great scholars, and so it's known. But he came from a simple family. This implies that they were a very modest family. They also were not known for producing great scholars. However, his father did have a reputation of very pious and God-fearing. So piety and taqwa has effects on your children. Sometimes you may not be a great alim or a scholar, a great sheikh, but because of your commitment to Allah, your taqwa, your sincerity to Allah, Allah will grant you from your progeny scholars, huffaz, ulama. And in the case of Imam Nawawi, what a scholar he was, subhanallah. His full name was Abu Zakaria Muhyiddin Yahya, son of Sharaf of Nawa, of An-Nawawi. And then there is a longer lineage mentioned here. He is given the descriptive name al-Nawawi because of his hometown. Okay, so we have this thing that when in Arabic, when someone is from a particular city or a place, we add a ya. Okay, ya nisba, ya nasab. We say Londoni, Bangladeshi, Silhati, Nawawi, Biritani, like that. This ya means he's from that place. So the 7th century Islam was very turbulent times, because as you know, this was the time when the Mongols, you heard about Genghis Khan or Genghis Khan, they say Genghis Khan, and invaded the Muslim lands in the whole of the Middle East. They came from an unknown place, from Mongolia. Who knows about Mongolia? Until today, there are only 3 million people in Mongolia. It's a very small number of people. But this, all of a sudden, this Genghis Khan came out of nowhere, okay? And he basically ransacked the whole of the Islamic Khilafah. He was going into country after country and destroying Baghdad and Iraq and so on. Some scholars thought this is Day of Judgment is here. That's how much havoc he wreaked. He destroyed libraries, he filled up the Furat with blood and books, and it was just disaster, it was just catastrophe. Okay, however, during the last decade of the century, Mongols were defeated and removed from these Muslim lands. So during the second half of this century, the Mongols were defeated by a man called Saifuddin Quds, okay, from the Mamalik, who were governing Egypt at the time, but they were actually originally Turks who were owned. Slaves were owned, but then they became leaders afterwards. And they called them Mamluks because they were owned first from milk. And they became the leaders. They became the Sultan. They became the Khilafah. And they met at a place called Ain Jalut. And Saifuddin Quds was a great warrior. And he managed to defeat Genghis Khan and his crazy army. Okay, they were defeated. By the grace and the mercy of Allah, they were. These turbulent times did not mean the end of the Islamic studies for the inhabitants of that area. In fact, Nuruddin Zinki was the Ustad and the Shaykh of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi came from Nuruddin Zinki, opened the first Darul Hadith in Damascus during this century. One does not find a shortage of scholars and learning during the turbulent centuries of Islamic history. And that's one of the amazing things of how Allah preserves the deen. Regardless of what happens, you will still find students of knowledge dedicating their entire life. I mean, even during the Gaza genocide, we saw people completing their studies, having their masters, dissertations in a tent. It's ajib, like their commitment to knowledge. Hifz al-Quran, they were memorizing Quran. Huffaz were being produced even during the genocide. Can you believe the amount of commitment that they had to the deen? And this is from the divine wisdom and the decree of Allah. And this also goes to the importance and the virtue and the value of seeking knowledge. It's such a great ibadah. It's one of the best forms of ibadat. From all the nawafil, the best form of ibadah is seeking knowledge. And it's not just nafal, it's actually fard kifaya. It's a communal obligation. Some scholars have to be produced. If no scholars are produced, then the whole ummah, whole community is to blame and sinful. And that's why Allah said in the Quran, Surah Tawbah, فَلَوْلَا نَفَرَ مِن كُلِّ فِرْقَةٍ مِّنْهُمْ طَائِفَةٍ. There should be from every firqa, every group, every nation, every tribe, some people that go and seek knowledge. And if that's not the case, then they should support it, they should facilitate it, they should sponsor it, they should encourage it. Sometimes I go and visit communities and say, we don't have any local scholars. I say, well, that's your responsibility to produce local imams. You have to. Every community has to. This is your job. And if that means choosing one of your children in your community and all of you chipping in to fund him, to sponsor him so that he can go and seek knowledge and come back and teach your community, so be it. It's very important. Okay, so therefore, there was no shortage of scholars even during this time of genocide of Genghis Khan. His childhood, from his youth, al-Nawawi rahmatullah alayhi, was not attracted to any sports. He didn't like playing. You know, kids, they love playing. He didn't like playing. Indeed, other children, from the children around him, they loved to play. From an early age, he turned his attention to studies. They would call him to come and play and he would not like it. He would feel uncomfortable. He'd rather study and learn. He hated any activity that would take him away from memorizing the Quran. On one occasion, the children forced him to play with them and he cried because of the time that was being wasted. SubhanAllah. It is not surprising then that he memorized the Quran at an early age. His teacher in Nawa conveyed this incident to Imam's father, who was a virtuous and pious man, keeping in view the learning quest of his son. That you say, make sure your son carries on studying because he's a very serious student. Facilitate it for him. He decided to dedicate the life of his son for the service and promotion of the cause of Islamic faith. In a short period, the Imam al-Nawawi rahmatullah learned to recite the Quran, and by the time he nearly had attained puberty, he finished completing, memorizing the Quran and studying it and understanding and so on. His pursuit of knowledge. Imam al-Nawawi rahmatullah lived in Nawa till the age of 18 years old. And this was in the year 649 after Hijri. He went to Damascus, which wasn't too far at the time, and was considered the center of learning, as there were more than 300 institutes of Islamic education at that time, colleges and universities in Damascus. He studied Hadith, one of his specializations. Islamic jurisprudence, another one of his specializations. And sometimes you have a scholar who's a specialist in Hadith, but he's not a specialist in fiqh and Islamic law. But in Nawawi rahmatullah alayhi, he's so well grounded and such a genius that when you go to Hadith, he's seen as a reference. You go to fiqh, the Shafi'i madhab doesn't stand without him. He is one of the key conveyors, collectors, organizers of the Shafi'i madhab. Imam al-Nawawi is a pillar of the Shafi'i school of law. Subhanallah, it's just amazing. Okay? So he studied Hadith, Islamic jurisprudence and principles, which is usul, from many great scholars such as Ishaq ibn Ahmad al-Maghribi, al-Maqdisi, Abdul Rahman al-Ambari, Abdul Aziz al-Ansari. He studied Sahih Muslim from Abu Ishaq Ibrahim al-Wasiti. These are some great scholars. It is recorded that he used to study 12 lessons a day, which means more than 12 hours a day. He's studying. And during his walking and traveling, he would be engaged and immersed in revising and learning. So his entire life was dedicated to knowledge. Okay? He began teaching at the Asharafiyya school at the age of 24, which is very early. Because back in those days, for you to become a teacher we're not talking about PhD of today, it's much more than that. You'd have to be an allama, an all-rounder, fully grounded. You should become a reference point, a marja, for you to be a scholar and a teacher. Knowledge was taken very seriously in the earlier years, and of course the years before even more seriously. During his period, he performed the Hajj. His reputation and excellence as a scholar began to be recognized by the scholars inhabitants of Damascus. And during this period in Damascus, he done his Hajj pilgrimage in the year 1253 AD. His pursuit of knowledge dominated his entire life. He would put all of his time into studying, learning and teaching. It is even stated that he would not sleep except when sleep would overtake him. So he wasn't sleeping like 10 to 6, whatever. He would only sleep when necessary. Okay? He would rest on his books and sleep for a little, then he would act startled upon awakening and continue studying. He once said about himself, I spent 2 years without lying on the ground to sleep on my side. He was sleeping on his books, sitting up. Subhanallah, it's just the amount of sacrifice these scholars. One of the scholars of the past said, the most difficult time for me in the whole day is when I have to eat, because it wastes my time. Another scholar would get his bread and put it into a glass of water, let it become like soft, like a soup, and just drink it to save time. The way they valued their time is unimaginable, and no wonder why, despite passing away in his 40s, today you're in England, London, 2025, remembering his name and singing his praise and making dua to Allah for his mercy. Okay, his austerity, as in he was very simple and humble. He led an austere, simple and modest life, although it would have been possible for him to live otherwise, because he's a scholar. Like scholars are the top of society. They are the creme de la creme of society. He could have collected a lot of money and became very wealthy with his knowledge. Given his teaching and position and influence, he could have become very rich, but he preferred to live a very simple and humble life. Some narrations state that all the clothing he possessed was a turban and a long gown. He didn't have time for this. He was too busy. He did not desire any pleasures of this world. Like, this was a person that Allah chose for knowledge. Allah selected him for this purpose only. At one point in time, he would not eat anything except some cake and olives that his father would send him from time to time from Noah. When you're saying cake, you're thinking, mashallah, cake box. None of that. We're talking about bread, just about, and olives. One of the reasons for this was that he was certain that such food came from permissible sources. Eating from halal, from absolute purity, is very deeply connected with your taqwa and your piety. And your taqwa and your piety is the essence of your ability to seek knowledge. If we are not clean in the heart, knowledge will not enter it. Like, Imam Shafi'i said, شَكَوْتُ إِلَى وَكِيعِ سُوءَ حِفْظِي. He complained to his teacher Waki' ibn al-Jarrah that I can't learn, I'm finding it hard to learn. فَأَرْشَدَنِي إِلَى تَرْكِ الْمَعَاصِي. He said, you have to leave sinning. And it's narrated that he accidentally, his eyes fell upon the shin, the lower part of the shin of a female. It wasn't, it's forgiven, it's not a sin. But they were so precautious with their eyes and their senses that it should not be tainted, contaminated in any doubtful way. Even their food, the blood that runs in their vein has to be absolute from pure sources. They were so particular. Because that has an effect on your spiritual state. And your spiritual state dictates your ability to seek, understand, comprehend, compile knowledge and the barakah in your time. So we're extremely precautious on this matter. And today, mashallah, tabarakallah, we'll eat anything. And today's, there's a what do you call it? Stereotype, imams are fat. They eat anything. A'udhu billah. This is not, we have to be very precautious. In fact, I remember my dad used to say, he used to work in an area, I'm not going to say it now, probably, but he used to work in an area. He said, I don't go to anyone's house for dawat. Why? Because a lot of them guys are selling alcohol in their restaurants. I don't know where the income is coming from. I will not eat from their house. They're not feeding him alcohol. The income is coming from doubtful sources or haram sources, so he will not eat from that. Ajeeb, wallah. We are so, we live in a different world compared to these greats of the past. He did not accept any fees for his teaching. Now his only material possession of this world was books as small as his small room was like a warehouse of books, and his goal was not simply to possess his goal was not simply to possess a large library. His books were not for decoration or display. Instead, he benefited greatly from those works and his lectures and writings. Numerous people have benefited, as in millions have benefited from his. Numerous is an understatement. Millions have benefited from his works since then. And now, rahmatullah alayhi, for information, never married. So we say nikah is sunnah. Nikah is sunnah by default. By default, it's sunnah. But if someone has no need for it and is going to use their time for something else to do with ibadah, struggling in the path of Allah, fighting in the path of Allah, and they are dedicated and they're not going to fall into the sin related to do with desires, then for them it's jaiz. In fact, it's preferred. Does that make sense? So the Prophet ﷺ, of course, he's the best example. And to get married is sunnah. But if someone prefers not to while also abstaining from any wrong, then it's completely jaiz for that person. So sunnah, we didn't say nikah is fard, did we? Actually, we do say nikah is fard sometimes. If someone is going to definitely commit sins, but is able to also get married. So you're able to get married, and you're going to commit sin, and you're not going to get married. No. For you, it's fard to get married. So the ruling of marriage changes from fard to wajib to sunnah to mubah to makruh, and even haram for some people who are going to oppress their spouses, who plan to get married just to oppress their spouses, just to get a passport and then divorce them afterwards. It happens too often. I spoke about this last khutbah, in our toxic divorces khutbah, I think you remember. Okay. And Noah never got married, and the reason for this was his austerity and lack of desire. He had no need for this dunya, for the pleasures of this world. His life was filled with desire to learn, teach, and engage in acts of worship. Okay, it is possible, one of the writers wrote about him, it is possible that he did not marry because he feared that he would not be able to fulfill the rights of his wife due to his learning desires. He would not have time for his spouse. So what's the point of getting married and then not giving someone their due haqq? So again, his not marrying was for piety and for taqwa. His writings are so many, and Nawawi started writing early in his life. Hence, in the span of 12 or 13 years, he compiled some of the most important works in the history of Islam. His classical work, Al-Majmu'. Al-Majmu' is a book of fatwa. in the Shafi'i school of law, what is also comparative fiqh. Okay? Al-Majmu' is by al-Nawawi. Majmu'at al-Fatawa is another one by Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. There is a compilation of fatwas. But al-Majmu' is Imam al-Nawawi's great work, colossal magnum opus, which he compiled, which he contributed to, which he did not complete, is published in 9 large size volumes. Following is just some of his works that he completed in that short time. Riyadh al-Salihin that was completed. Predominantly, we read most of it. Okay, Al-Minhaj bi Sharhi Saheeh Muslim. Okay, his commentary on the Sahih of Imam Muslim. Okay, and each of the great books of hadith like Bukhari and Muslim and Ibn Majah and the Tirmidhi and Abi Dawud, they all have shuruhat, explanations. And the most famous for Bukhari is, as you know, Fathul Bari. Fathul Bari is, because sometimes you read the hadith but you don't know what it's talking about. You don't know the context, you don't know the background, you don't know the implications, what it actually means. So then scholars come and explain these hadiths. And for Sahih al-Bukhari, the biggest, the greatest is Fathul Bari by a Shafi'i scholar called Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, who was from Egypt. There's also another one called Umdatul Qari. He is a Hanafi scholar, so he explains the Bukhari according to the Hanafi approach. So Sahih Muslim as well has got many, many shuruhat, and this is one of the explanations, tafsirs if you like, of the books of the hadith book. منهاج الطالبين, تهذيب الأسماء واللغات, تقريب the 40 hadiths of Nawawi, that's very famous. كتاب الأذكار, okay, Sharh of the Sunan of Abu Dawud as well. Sharh of Sahih al-Bukhari, Mukhtasar, a concise version of a Tirmidhi, and many, many other compilations and books. His students, I mean, one of the ways when you study a scholar in Islam, we look at his time, his life, his birth, his family, his environment, political environment, because all of these things have an effect on the scholar. So their birth, their place of birth, their family of birth, their environment, their society, the political situation in that society at that time, his teachers, his learning, his studying, his compilations, his students, who he learned from and who he taught, because that's how Islam is chains, blocks. Each scholar connects you to the previous generation and to the next generation. That's how sanad works. So who he learned from and who he taught, so he becomes the building block between all of these greats in that whole time and the millions that are inspired and learned and benefited from them. Okay, from his students, besides his writings, of course, Nawawi cast his influence over numerous students. He taught for many years and many people benefited from him. Some of his better known students are Ibn al-Attar, Jamaluddin, al-Mizzi, okay, al-Badr Muhammad ibn Jama'ah, and many others. There are some stories of incidents that took place in his lifetime with the rulers and how he stayed away from politics and etc. and so on. Okay, but I wanted to focus on just a brief biography. So we'll talk to you about his death. After returning to his hometown in Nawa, and Nawawi fell ill and passed away. He died on the 24th of Rajab, 676, which was 1277 AD. He died at the age of 44. However, by the grace and the mercy of Allah, his accomplishments during his short lifespan were equal to or greater than many who lived twice or even our whole lifetimes. I mean, I don't think the whole of East London can, or I don't think the whole of the UK can produce a scholar like Nawawi in 100 years. And this is what he compiled and done including everything, childhood, in 44 years. That is what you call inspiration. That is what you call a favor and a grace and a bounty of Allah. And they maintain this very, very strict levels of taqwa and piety and sincerity, because all of it is interconnected. Because you've got to understand the knowledge at hand is the knowledge of revelation. It's not just data science and data information. It's not. Knowledge of Islam and knowledge of revelation is an internal matter. It's a matter of divine bounty. Allah has to grant it to you. And for that, you must make yourself the correct utensil to receive that. You must be sinless, pure. You must be surrounding yourself with the right kind of environment and the people and the mashayikh and the scholars for you to be able to be a recipient of that nur of the knowledge of Islam. It's not simple. We're all insignificant. Nothing. That's why it's very hurtful when children, teenagers, have the audacity to speak ill of some of the greats of the past. Like al-Nawawi, like Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, like the scholars of the past. You're shooting yourself in the foot. Because that hadith says, "Man aada li waliyan, faqad adhantuhu bil harb." Whomsoever becomes an enemy of one of my friends, Allah is saying in Hadith Qudsi, if you become an enemy to any of my friends, then I will go to war against you. And Allah said in the Quran, "Ala inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun." Indeed, the awliya of Allah have no fear upon them and they have nothing to be sad about. Allah will take care of them. They dedicated themselves for Allah, so Allah will take care of them. You make yourself for Allah, Allah will take care of you. Subhan al-Malik, la ilaha illallah. When the news of his death reached Damascus, the people were very saddened. Tears flowed from their eyes. One of the greatest scholars and the greatest leaders of the people had passed away indeed. One who was greatly beloved to almost everyone he touched in his life. He is buried in the hometown of Nawa in Syria, and Nawa wished that his grave should be according to Sunnah, i.e. not to be raised. And some people, they want their grave to be attractive, and none of the scholars of the past would have wanted that. Some people would do it because they're overly passionate. They decorate it, they build a thing around it, etc. Sometimes it's needed for protection. For example, Masjid Nabawi Sharif, that those barricades are needed because people will do anything there. Even with those barricades, they still have guards pushing you along because people start doing ajib stuff there. They get overexcited and their emotions overtake them. And our religion is not just based on emotions, it's based on Shara of Quran and Sunnah. We worship Allah based on how Allah wants to be worshipped, not just based on emotions. Okay? We're good? Okay. Quickly, before I wrap up today, because I want to fulfill my promise and I don't want to go back on that, I said that we will quickly have an overview of what is Saheeh and what is not Saheeh when it comes to Hadith. You hear the word Saheeh, so what's Saheeh, right? I mean, we've studied this before previously, but I just want to quickly go over Saheeh and not Saheeh for you to be able to have a brief understanding, inshallah. Even before we go to Saheeh and Da'if, there are other terms that one should know, like Mutawatir and Khabrul Wahid and Qudsi and not Qudsi and Hadith and Athar and Khabar. What do they mean? It's very important, these terms. Okay? Then, of course, from the Khabrul Wahid or Ahadith al-Ahad, there is from the Mashhur, the Aziz and the Gharib. Different terms mean different things. Okay? But we're talking about today Saheeh li dhatih. How does a hadith become Saheeh? What makes it Saheeh? A hadith that is Saheeh by itself, without the support of another hadith, without the support of anything else, is just Saheeh because of itself. Okay? This is a narration. How does it become like that? This is a narration which is reported by persons, every single person in that chain of narration. So when Imam Bukhari says, I am learning and narrating from his teacher, he's saying about his teacher. And his teacher says, I am learning and narrating from my teacher. And the word they use for this in the science of hadith is haddathani. This hadith was given to me, or taught me, educated me, talked to me. Haddathani. Okay? وَبِهِ قَالَ حَدَّثَنِي. So whenever you go to a hadith dars, you'll hear the word haddathani, haddathani, haddathani a lot. Because they're talking about, this is the chain. Al-Bukhari said, his teacher haddathani. And he just haddathani, his teacher's teacher. So every single, now if you want a immaculate chain of narration where it is Saheeh, then every single person in that entire chain, from the narrator to the Prophet, has to be completely trustworthy. cannot be a doubtful person in any way, shape or form. They are people of complete trust, complete dignity, complete, nothing negative in the sense of their character, of their reliability could be said. Of course, everyone's humans, but they're trustworthy people. Complete and precise. So they're trustworthy, number one. Number two, they are complete and precise in their memory. So if someone's trustworthy but has a weak memory, then they will not be in those chains. Because trustworthy and thabt, he has to have hifz, very strong hifz. Number three, that chain has to be continuous. From the narrator to the Sahabi, to the Prophet ﷺ. If there is a missing link, khalas, it's not Sahih anymore. The links has to be all connected. Number four, free from any irregularities. What does that mean? Irregularity is basically, this hadith has to conform to the greater framework of Sharia. If there's a hadith that's opposing a Quranic ayah directly, or a principle of the deen that's known, if a hadith comes and says it's being narrated by trustworthies, a strong chain, but it's opposing a clear known fact of Islam from the Quran and other hadith, then this is irregularity. So the hadith has to be free from irregularity and other defects. What does obvious defects and what does irregularity mean? It's also discussed in this booklet that we studied before. But we need you to know that there are 5 conditions: trustworthy, memory, chain, free from irregularity, and free from defects in the hadith or the chain. So this is the hadith that is called Saheeh by itself. If a hadith has that kind of chain, connected, trustworthy, memory, free from obvious defects, free from irregularities, and this is called a Saheeh chain. And Imam al-Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi, he is known that his kitab is the most authentic after the Quran, because he collected the most. He memorized hundreds and thousands of hadiths, by the way, Imam al-Bukhari. And there are Sahih hadiths outside of the Bukhari too. Some people think only Bukhari put all the Sahih inside the Bukhari. But Imam Bukhari never made that claim. He only put the most authentic of the authentic in there. But there are also other authentic hadiths outside of Bukhari. And that's why you have people like Imam Muslim coming afterwards, collecting different hadiths. Mostly, a lot of the time same, but a lot of different hadiths as well. So that's how you have a Sahih hadith by itself. The next level down is something called hadith. It's not Sahih, it's called Hasan. What is it called? Hasan. This is the same definition as the previous, except that in the case of the narrator being completely precise in their memory, he's not fully precise. He sometimes makes mistakes or forgets. Sometimes. Not all the time. Sometimes. So that's the only difference. Sahih, memory is sharp as a blade. But Hasan, one grade down, because why? The memory is not as sharp. Of a narrator. Any of the narrators in the chain. Now, brothers, this is where it's very important. If someone says to you, this hadith is not Sahih, it does not mean it's a lie. It's very important for you to understand this. Just because it's not hadith is not Sahih, it could be Hasan. It could be Hasan. There's more options here still. Even if it's not Hasan by itself, it could become Hasan by corroboration, by validation from other hadiths, by Quranic ayat, by other principles of the deen. Does that make sense to you? And that's why I'm explaining this to you, is because many people assume that the moment someone says this is not an authentic hadith, they think this is what? It's a lie. This is a misrepresentation, misunderstanding, and it's completely wrong. For you to know this piece of information, that's the whole purpose of this today's lecture. That just because something is not sahih, it does not mean it's batil. Otherwise, why do the scholars collect these hadiths? Why do they collect hadiths that are not sahih? Why? Because it serves a purpose. because they're Hasan. Sometimes they're Sahih li ghayri, Hasan li dhati, Hasan li ghayri. Even da'if hadiths. So then you've understood what Hasan is. The next grade down is called the da'if hadith. What is da'if? This is a narration which does not fulfill the condition of any of the categories Sahih or Hasan mentioned above. So basically, the memory may be weak, or the chain may have a defect or irregularity, or there might be an element of lack of trust in one of the narrators, and so on. So what you need to understand is that the scholars took extreme precaution when it came to collection of hadiths. Okay? And the science of hadith are vast, huge. And for us to make comments on hadith like that, it's very, very delicate matter. That's why the muhaddithin are great people. Just like the mufassirun are great people, the muhaddithin are also great people. And sometimes it requires more effort, because hadith is so much more effort. Because the Quran is khalas. There's no doubt in the Quran. The Quran is there. But it's about understanding, explaining tafsir of the Quran. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of knowledge, a lot of hikmah, a lot of wisdom, a lot of understanding of the sunnah as well. But the scholars of hadith are special people. They are really special people, because they have to study a lot, and they have to deal with a lot. And I'm not just talking about someone that teaches hadith like Riyadh al-Salihin, repeating from a book and reading from translation. I'm not saying that at all. I'm talking about scholars who know the books of hadith, maybe memorize them, and know the chains, and know the individuals in the chain. That's what I'm talking about. They will tell you that this person, I know his biography, I know that he's trustworthy, I know he's not trustworthy. And there are thousands upon thousands of people like that. If there are hundreds of thousands of hadiths, can you imagine how many narrators there are? The world of hadith is an ocean. Anyway, that's all I want to share with you, inshallah. We're so fortunate, so blessed that we're able to study the hadith of Prophet ﷺ. This is a divine honor and a dignity that we are able to learn from the words that our beloved Prophet ﷺ spoke, and the teachings that he did by his actions and approvals. We're so fortunate. Falhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Everyone say Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, for today, we'll be ending here. Okay? And as you know, as I've said many a time before, this class will be pausing until after Ramadan. Because for a few weeks I'm away. I'm going to universities for talks. And then Ramadan, we don't do the after Maghrib, after Isha class, because Tarawih and Iftar. So after Ramadan, inshallah, we shall carry on with a new book, inshallah. Very strong chance I've already been looking at is a book called Al-Lu'lu'u wal-Marjan. Lu'lu'u wal-Marjan فيما اتفق عليه الشيخان. This is a book that collects all the hadiths that both Bukhari and Muslim have narrated. So they are extremely authentic. Authentic upon authentic. جزاكم الله خيرا. We'll end it up to here. سبحانك اللهم أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
You mentioned Genghis Khan.
Sorry?
You mentioned
Yeah.
Khan. So,
Salam.
I don't know if you know, obviously, in the community at the moment, I say at the moment, for the last few years,
That's bloody tough handshake, man.
Good handshake.
It's tough handshake trying to break my hand. Me? You?
Okay. There's a thing around Turkish series. Have you heard about Ertugrul?
I've heard about Ertugrul, yeah.
And Osman.
I've heard of it. I haven't watched any of them.
I don't expect you to have watched any of that.
Yeah.
And that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is there's also stuff around Salahuddin Ayyubi. So you mentioned Nuruddin Zengi. And I think at the moment people are watching him, but sometimes because it's a bit more dramatized and whatever, they're probably losing a bit more focus. But I don't know if there's an opportunity to maybe do a session saying the history and how that maybe fits in, even if it's like very brief. People like Nuruddin Zengi, because when they come and hear Salahuddin Ayyubi, Nuruddin Zengi, they're quite significant people in Islam.
Absolutely.
And these series are maybe highlighting them, but people are not realizing the significance. So my kids watch it, I watch it with them, but I try to sort of tell them, look, this is the history. Yeah, these are the people that fought for the caliphate. Yeah. These are the people that kind of
Defend Islam and its people, yeah.
Yeah, during the times of the Mongols.
Yeah.
When they came over, it's dramatized, and they like to think that all the Muslims win against the Byzantine and the Christians and the Mongols and all of that kind of stuff. But I thought maybe because if it's out there in the community, maybe
I think that's a good point, because I think a lot of the time people get lost in the purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they're more interested in dressing in the Turkish hat than actually living the spirit of who they were and why they flourished. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's lost. Like, you know, like a lot of people are very passionate, but is it taking them closer to Allah? Is the main question that we need to ask.
I think it starts off maybe like that, but then it gets.
And then you end up missing Fajr, and then it just becomes entertainment.
Yeah, it becomes entertainment. You're watching you're binge watching like a 2-hour series, and then
I know people. I've heard about this.
So that's.
I think that's something to address. I agree with you.
So just a quick history of how like these people actually fit into the Islamic empire and things. So I think it might be quite entertaining for the kids or the younger generation.
I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah,
I'll try to take it on, inshallah.
No, inshallah. Have a look. But I think that would be really useful.
Inshallah, I think it will be as well.
Because even the series, they have people like Imam Ghazali referencing.
Yeah. By the way, they also have a series like that in Arabic for Ahmad ibn Hanbal, for Umar.
Okay, I know. I've heard about Umar.
Yeah, they have a whole series for Ahmad ibn Hanbal.
Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's probably going to be English translated or dubbed at some point, but they have a whole series on that. I remember the Umar series. I watched some of it when I was in Egypt a long time ago.
Yeah.
When I was in Egypt, I used to watch some of it. It was like, you know, in the evening, you just watch something.
Yeah.
You used to watch that. I can remember, it was very dramatic, but.
Yeah, it is traumatized.
You know what's the sad part? The sad part is when you see those same actors doing something stupid afterwards.
If you see their lives outside,
it's so sad.
Yeah, because my kids said, did you see this guy? I was just like, wow, this guy, you wouldn't even tell, like,
exactly.
I was like they're Muslim or whatever.
Because they're just actors at the end of the day.
Yeah, they are. But I think the principle there is, I think we can tap into sort of people just in terms of.
I mean, it does a great deal of good in the sense of like bringing people like a sense of izzah and honor.
Yeah.
Like, you know, alhamdulillah, we had a great past. We should live up to it. That they do quite well.
And how people stood up against the wrongdoers and stuff, you know, and they succeeded. Exactly. It was tough, but they succeeded. They persevered.
Believe that Muslims are always just like useless. What did Islam bring to the world? That kind of thing. Yeah. So that it does a good example.
Even things like, you know, like the trade and stuff, like nowadays, trade. I tell my kids, he's talking about trading with Jews and Christians and owning the trade, paying the tax and all that kind of stuff. This is still rampant today.
Absolutely.
Just on an international scale. He's just showing you in that little kind of area that